Scrappers, recyclers, and investors, welcome to Shark Scrapper Live, where every week we're talking about what's going on in the precious metals market, the industrial metals market. Plus, we throw out a few safety tips and we check on a few miscellaneous things that are in our wonderful world of scrap and recycling. It is great to be here. I tell you what, I love this time of year. We've got the tree going, we're wrapping presents. We're talking about Thanksgiving. I mean, it's just going to be it. Mrs. Shark and I just love this time of year. It is great to be here. I'm looking forward to having a wonderful hour with everybody. I'm trying something a little different this week. I'm not going to put the banner up because it only matters what the price is today, and so it's when folks see the shorts or the replays or those kind of things, it can kind of get a little bit confusing for some folks. So no banner today with the ticker symbols for the prices for our precious metals and our industrial metal. Let's see, who do we have in the house right now? We've got Scrapping Irish. Welcome, great to be here. Thank you for asking everybody to do the thumbs up. Scrapping on the fly, always good to have you here. Roger and see you Scrapping, great to have you on board, my friend. E-Waste Mike, welcome to the show. Richard Holbert's in the house. Always good to have you here, Richard. Electronic Scrapper. Hey, you still cleaning around your computer there, man, or did you get that all done? Or did you just give up? Sister G123 is in the house. Welcome, Sister G. JR Cat's here. Great to have everybody here. Awesomeness. All right. Well, our first discussion for today is our precious metal. We're talking silver. So here we're looking at the 1 week silver chart. I'm on the APMEX website. I need to confirm and tell you all that I am not sponsored by APMEX this week. I get nothing from APMEX. APMEX just happens to be one of those places that I have regularly used to buy and sell my physical gold and silver. And I always recommend that people have physical gold and silver in their portfolio, whether you use it as a hedge against inflation, as a long-term investment, or just part of your broader investment portfolio, or you just want to collect it and hand it off to your children or grandchildren later on. I love having some physical gold and silver around. I haven't asked every once in a while, why don't I recommend platinum or palladium? And the biggest reason that I don't recommend those is because the reason for having physical gold and silver is to facilitate selling it if you need to or you want to. And silver and gold is very easy for other scrappers, for pawn shops, for coin collectors to recognize and give you a reasonable price. Platinum and palladium become a little more challenging, and it might be difficult to find someone who will buy a platinum coin or round or bar from you, and two, offer you a good price. I'm not saying that they're not there, and places like APMEX would do it. But if you want to be able to do a quick turn, like going down to your local pawn shop or your coin dealer to get some cash if you need it, gold and silver are going to be a whole lot easier to manage. So that's why I recommend gold and silver. So anyway, where are we at here? We're seeing gold is at $50.26 an ounce. And if we look at the chart for the week, we can see that, we kind of had a little plateau. We had this drop. We climbed out of the plateau, a little spike here before we drop back down, climbing back out. This is pretty classic. Yeah, the investors are trying to figure out what they're going to do. That's all we're seeing here. This is all that's going on. If we look at the 3 month, if we push the right buttons and we look at the 3 month, it smooths out some of that churn, but we can still see we had this climb, we dropped, we plateaued, we climbed, we have a nice little peak here. We dropped down to this little plateau that's going on here. So again, this is sort of classic. We peaked, and now the investors are figuring out, okay, now what's going to happen? What's going to happen now? This is pretty classic for what happens after a peak in a precious metal, or pretty much any commodity for that matter. And then if we take a quick look at the year, well, as you can see, we had this slow, pretty much a slow, steady climb, a bunch of stuff going on, but we had this nice climb up to the recent peak. Then we had this plateau in the middle, and then here's the other peak, and now we're in another plateau. Now, before I get over to trading economics and we do a more detailed analysis, one of the things that I want to just spend a little bit of time here is, if you are buying silver, how do you want to buy your silver? Let's take a look here real quick at the sales side of the APMEX website. You can buy bars, rounds, and coins. Remember that coins carry with them an actual currency value, whereas rounds or bars are just bullion, just straight bullion quantity. Now, of course, a silver dollar is going to be worth probably more than a silver dollar, but always keep that in mind. I was actually kind of surprised. I looked at U.S. Mint, and I looked at the Silver Eagle, and I thought it was really interesting that the Silver Eagle, if we just look at a 1 ounce American Silver Eagle coin of random year, all right, you could get it for as low as $58.25 an ounce, or $7.99 per coin over spot. All right, so that's your premium. Now, of course, you have to buy a lot of them to get that. So what we're really looking at is, for most of us, we're looking at somewhere between 1 and 20 kind of coins that you would buy on a regular basis here. And so you're looking at anywhere 60.25 to 59.25. So your premium is, remember, silver right now is 50.26. So if you only bought a couple of coins, your premium is going to be 10-ish kind of dollars. If you want to buy a specific 2025 coin, then that premium is going to be up in the 15-ish dollar range. But you can always, with silver, and what I always recommend, if you're just doing it purely for the investment in the silver, is to just go with a bar or a round. I like the rounds. I mean, I have both rounds and bars. I like the rounds because you can get them in 1 ounce rounds, and the premiums are very reasonable on 1 ounce rounds. You can do like the lunar rounds if you're into the Chinese Lunar Year mint kind of coins. APMEX, because they're minting their own coins, APMEX gives you pretty good deals on their coins. So here's a 1 ounce APMEX silver round. And, if we go here, 1 ounce silver round, 2026 APMEX Year of the Horse, you can get it at $54.75 for any quantity. All right, so that's an important thing to think about. Whereas the Eagles that we just looked at, your spot, your value over spot, or your premium changed based on how many you buy. But because APMEX is minting their own coins, they're giving you a deal here by saying $54.75. That's basically what, $4 ish over spot. Because silver's at 50.26. If you buy one of these at 54.75, that's like $4.50 roughly for the premium. So that's pretty good. You can do pretty good there. So just when you're out there looking at the silver that you're going to buy, always remember that you are going to have the premium that you're going to have to pay, and then you want to be able to cover and go beyond that when you sell the coin back to whoever you sell it to. So always be very, very mindful of the premium when you're buying, whether it's silver or gold. All right, let's head over to trading economics and take a little more detailed dive into silver. We see that silver slipped below $50 an ounce, uh, falling for the second consecutive session amid expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will refrain from cutting interest rates in December as policymakers navigate economic uncertainties. Yeah, there's just, again, we've been talking about this every week now for quite a while. There's just a lot of turmoil, a lot of uncertainty. People don't know what's going on. The delayed U.S. non farm payroll report released on Thursday showed mixed signals, with employment growth accelerating in September, but the unemployment rate rose to 4.4, the highest in 4 years. This report will serve as the final labor market data ahead of the FOMC meeting as uh, as they're trying to decide what's going to happen. October employment release and fold those figures into the delayed November report. So, and additionally, Fed Governor Michael Barr cautioned that the central bank must proceed carefully on further rate cuts, with inflation still running above target, uh, while the white metal is on track to lose over 1% for the week. Okay, so let's boil all this down. Um, the Fed is trying to remember the Fed has a dual mandate: uh, monitor the economy, so they're balancing inflation and deflation for the economy, and they're trying to uh, stimulate employment, keep employment going. So they're trying to balance these two often conflicting things here in the U.S. And that creates a lot of, for a lot of people out there that aren't looking at all the numbers that the Fed bankers look at. It gets hard to understand sometimes why they make the decisions they do. Um, and so, because of that back and forth and that uncertainty, the people that invest in silver are also sitting there going, "Okay, so what do we do? What are we doing here?" If we look at, so this is the 1 year chart, and this is just a line chart here, and we see that silver peaked here at 54 plus, and then we saw it peaked again here at 53 plus. Well, now we're down here at 49 something. So we're not that far off of those peaks, and this would still be a pretty reasonable time if you're thinking about selling your silver to sell your silver. And if we go to the candlesticks, and I'm going to zoom in on this part of the chart here. So what is interesting and catches my eye is that we see the run up to the peak for silver was not a 1 day spike. We had a little growth with little, each day, one day went up, one day closed down, one day closed up, one day closed down. But when it closed down, it was closing down a little bit higher than the day before. Then we had a few days where it was closing up, 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 up. Then we have the crash. And when you see the crash is some long red candlesticks, okay? So that means in 1 day, this is how the price fell. And remember, these long lines that are called wicks at the end of the, here, let me blow up that one just so you can see it. Boop, 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 boop. Nope, come back here, come back here. Sorry about that. There we go. Man, I keep doing that. Sorry about that. So the wicks at the end of these things, that tells you the lowest it got or the highest it got. All right. So when we're looking at where we're at over here, we see that we had these pretty steep falls very quickly. Then we go through this period where the investors are chewing on the data and trying to figure out what's going on. And we slowly grind back up again, and then bam, we're down again. And then we start chewing on what's going on again. So, I find these numbers kind of fascinating to look at. But for us in the scrap world, basically what it means is if you've got your silver scrap somewhere, some silver bearing material, I would say uh, go ahead and sell it. Silver bearing material is challenging in the scrap market. Think silver mylars or um, the old silver coffee and tea sets, right? Um, it's easy to get silver mylars, they're everywhere, but it's a little difficult to get the silver, right? I'm not saying it's hard, it's just a little challenging. You gotta do a little chemistry there. The silver coffee and tea sets and the silverware that are, parents, grandparents used to collect that are really not that popular anymore these days. Well, the problem you run into there is the children and the grandchildren that stuff got handed down to, they think the stuff is worth a fortune. And so they're asking you to pay a lot of money if you're going to get it from them. They don't understand that it's really not worth as much as they think it is. And, then in order to get that silver, usually you're doing some sort of reverse electroplating, and it's best done on a commercial scale to make it economical. There's other places where you can get your silver, the little contact nubs on switches, relays, things like that. It's a very little tiny bit. It's there, it takes a little bit to get to. So silver is not as big a player in our scrap world. It's still there. It's still worth going after, but understand that it's not going to give us that return like we're used to seeing with gold and gold bearing materials. All right, so let's go back to the line chart. And we're back here at the year. Let's go take a look at the forecast. Let's see, what's our over the past? Let's see, silver's price has risen 3.06% and is up 59.45% compared to the same time last year. And according to contracts for difference on the market, silver is expected to trade at 50.46 by the end of this quarter and 54.61 in the 12-month time frame. So, I like this. I like this forecast here, this gray line going up like that. It's a comforting line. I've talked about this with other metals. It's the kind of thing that says, go ahead and sell your scrap. You can hang on to it if you want, looking for a little bit more return. But really, the difference between 50 and 55, is it really that great? So, the most important thing is that this is not down. All right. So we're not worried about doing a panic sell or something like that. We've got a nice gradual slope going up. So we can feel good about selling our silver scrap or maybe even selling our physical silver that we may have accumulated. And again, maybe part of your game plan is when you see that nice upward slope is you sell off a little bit more of your silver. Maybe every month you sell a little bit more of your silver as the prices keep on going up. But how much you want to retain, that's important. I always like to try to make my silver free. So what that means is that I keep track of what I paid for all my silver. And then when I sell my silver, I like being able to sell enough of it so that what I have remaining behind is essentially free. Because that way, whatever money I make on it, then at some point in the future is pure profit. All righty, let's see what have you all had to say about silver and who all else has joined us. I'm going to go ahead and leave this chart up here so you all can look at it while we're talking about silver. And we're going to go and look at all the comments since we've been in here. Who has joined us? I'm going up here to see who has popped in since I started talking. I got to get to the right place in the I'm looking through the chat to try to find where I was before in the chat because it kept on moving up here. Ba, 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 ba. All right, so let's see. I think I found where I was. I got electronic scrapper. I know I said hello to you. Scrapping on the fly. I know I said hello to you. Uh, okay, so folks were saying hi to each other. All right, Andrew. Andrew has joined us from New Zealand. Andrew, great to have you here. So we're all the way over in New Zealand on one side, and we're over in Europe on the other side. So we're spanning the globe here, which is always very cool just to think about. JR Cat's talking junk dimes. Yeah, junk silver. There's a lot of folks. You know, it's interesting. A lot of folks that love junk silver, but I've also seen some folks talking about that they're having a hard time selling their junk silver because the coin and scrap dealers aren't buying the junk stuff. I'm not big into junk, so I can't tell you for sure. I've just seen some of that in YouTube going on. HH Recycling is with us. Great to have you here, HH Recycling, as always. Uh, So let's see. Sister G is saying Gold Rush Era Saloon here as silver dollars inlaid in resin on the bar top. Wonder when owner will retrieve those. Oh, interesting. Huh. Okay. Um, that's very cool. Gil's in the house. Gil's skills. Gil ran a test of his new. He was testing his OBS earlier today, so that seemed to go pretty well for you, Bob. And folks saying hi. Cruiser Mac is in the house. Hey, Cruiser, great to have you here, man. Bup, bup. Looking to see it as people join us. D Scraps in the house. D's freaking awesome has joined us. Great to have you here, D. Freaking awesome. Going through here looking for comments on silver, or looking for folks that have joined us. Uh, Scrapping on the fly is saying, I've refined about 15 ounces of silver so far. Very cool. Now, have you taken it all the way down to, have you melted it into a nugget or a droplet or something like that, or, round or bars, or is it still just the powder that you still need to melt down? Mm. Richard says he's got a fair build of silver bearing material. Not interested in buying any. When the prices go up, he'll recover it. Okay. Somebody must ask freaking awesome where he's at because he's saying Texas. Okay, so I am at the end there. We didn't get a whole lot of silver comments. We did get some silver comments, so that's cool. But it's always good to have any discussion that goes on when we're talking gold and silver and such. All right, safety topic for today. Our safety topic today is brought to us by, well, actually one of our own. Mike's Meltdown literally had a meltdown a few weeks ago, and it sort of created the kind of a seasonal safety issue that we all need to be thinking about. So, for those of you that don't know Mike's Meltdown, he had a fire in his house when he turned on the electric base heaters. They were dusty, and that combination of heat and the dust started a fire. Mike's Navy training kicked in, and he was able to get the fire out before the fire department arrived. So his house wasn't didn't burn to the ground, but he still had some pretty significant fire damage. And of course, that takes a long time to get cleaned up and repaired and such. So, um, fortunately, nobody was hurt. And while I don't recommend that you fight the fire yourself, if you have had training on how to fight certain fires and you know what you're doing, so for instance, securing the breakers so you've turned off the electricity, using the right kind of fire extinguisher to put the fire out. If you have been trained, then that's a different story. But and you have some sort of respirator or something because of the smoke, fine. Now, if not, the safest thing for you to do is to get out of the structure and let the fire department take care of it. So you've got two issues going on here that we need to talk about. One is the permanently installed base heaters or floorboard heaters. The most important thing you can do with those is to keep them clean and free of flammable materials. So vacuum them out regularly and make sure that you don't have a big, thick dust buildup in there. And if you have animals, it's even more important because that animal hair can get down inside of there and become a fuel source for fire. So make sure that you're cleaning them out. Now, the other thing that you want to pay attention to, and it's the same thing you have to pay attention to if you're using a portable space heater, is don't let curtains or other flammable material get real close to the heat source, in this case, your floorboard heater. So you want to keep space there so that you don't have the curtains catching fire or a magazine stack catching fire or something like that. Moving on to the actual portable space heaters, we have a couple of things that you need to be very mindful of. First, let's talk about the absolute no-no, and that is you don't use a propane or some other fuel-fired combustion-based heater inside the house. All right, that is a number one no-no. You're going to kill yourself. You have carbon monoxide buildup, so you will you will run out of oxygen. You'll die whether there's a fire or not, because that's a byproduct of combustion. So never use a combustible source in the house. Now, I know a lot of people are saying, well, wait a minute, what about gas stoves and gas grills? And yeah, you've got ventilation and you're not really warming up the space with those, right? What you're doing is you're cooking food, all right? It's not like you're in a room where you've kind of closed it up because you're cold and you're trying to get yourself warm. And so you got this, a propane stove going in or a, propane heater going on in that space. You've seen Mike, e-waste Mike, and he's got a propane heater that he uses in his garage when he's in there scrapping. But also recognize that his garage is not as airtight as people might think, and he probably has, a door crack somewhere open a little bit so that there is air exchange going on. Again, it's very different than a room in your house, which might be sealed up a bit tighter. Now let's move on to the classic safe electrical space heater that you see all the time, that people are using all the time. You don't have the carbon monoxide gas that can kill you, but the thing you have to be careful of is electric fires from those devices. So the safety notes that get put out are pretty clear. Plug them directly into a wall socket. Do not use an extension cord. Feel the cord periodically and see if it's getting hot. If the cord is getting hot, that means that it's drawing a lot more current, and it may be drawing more current than it's designed for. You can melt the insulation and have a fire. So now the reason why they say to plug it directly into a wall socket and not through an extension cord is because most times people don't have extension cords that are designed to handle the current that the space heater will draw. Space heaters using electrical resistance, they're drawing a lot of current to create that heat. So you are going to heat things up, and you don't want to risk that fire from the extension cord. Just like with the permanently installed floor heaters, you want to clean them out every now and then. Take a vacuum, suck out the dust that's inside there. Don't let that dust accumulate because, again, that can catch fire. You don't want to put them near combustible materials like your curtains, your paper stack, or other stuff that could catch fire. Keep them at least 3 feet away from anything else. Now, that's also important because you want to make sure you have good airflow so that they can suck in air and push out the warm air. If there isn't good airflow, then they can overheat. A lot of the newer models will come with fuses, thermostat switches, so that if they do overheat, they'll shut off. They may have timers that will shut off so they don't overheat. So the newer models tend to be a little bit safer. They also have fallover safety, so that if it gets tipped over, it will turn off. Again, another safety protocol that is important for a lot of the newer models. So if you're using the space heater from your grandparents, it is probably not very safe. I'm guessing it's probably even still a metal case that may or may not still be grounded. All right, so you've got the electrical hazard, you've got the fire hazard there. Newer models, you're going to have safeties to try to prevent them from catching fire. Now, here's the thing. If your space heater does catch fire, well, one of the safest things, the first thing you do, if you can, is just unplug it, because now you've taken away the energy source. But if the plastic has already started burning, now you've got noxious fumes, and that plastic could potentially keep burning even though you've turned off the energy source. A multi-purpose fire extinguisher should be able to put that out. But that's if you're there. So that comes to the other safety concern, and that is don't leave your space heaters unattended. They could start a fire when you're not there. And by the time you realize you've got a fire going on, it may be too late, because you could have more of the room, other furniture, other things involved in the fire that make it very hard to put out the fire. So you've got some real issues to think about if you're using portable space heaters. The newer ones are much safer than the older ones. General housekeeping is very, very important, and what I would call basic common sense kind of safety. Certainly don't let your children play, or especially younger children, play around them, because they might get hurt. They might tip them over, those kind of things. Be careful of your pets around your space heaters, and you should be just fine. All right, let's see if we've had comments on the space heaters and if folks have had any trouble there. Let's see, Ed Weber has joined us. Ed, great to have you here. Let's see. Richard is saying that his wife has given him lots of practice putting out kitchen fires. I could do a whole safety thing on kitchen fires, couldn't I? Yeah. Freaking awesome, saying hi to everybody, hoping everyone is well. JR Cat just cleaned the chimneys. Yeah, that's another big one. If you have a fireplace, that's important to do. Yeah, safety first is always important. I've even thought about maybe I should change the order of the live streams so that I do the safety note first, and then we talk about the metals. I do it this way just to break up the metals discussion. But yeah, safety first. Most common causes of plug-in electric heaters. Don't use I believe you're referring to a power strip. And that's one of the safety precautions is not to use extension cord or a safety or a plug, a power strip when especially if you're using a space heater, because that power strip is not going to be designed to handle the kind of amps that you're going to be pulling with a space heater and a couple other things plugged into that power strip. So yeah, absolutely, absolutely good point there. And that was from William Waller, by the way. William Waller, good, very good point. Uh, And William is also saying that the biggest problem with extension cords is people underwrite the wire to the current needed. Yeah, and that's always one of the big issues that goes on. The big thick uh, extension cords that we use in our shops, they're designed to carry that current load. But a lot of the extension cords that you find in your house that are inside use kind of things, they're not designed to carry that kind of current. So you always got to be careful with that. And freaking awesome is saying that he's a few friends in India that have some of the funniest extension cord plugs. It's crazy. One plug, hundreds of extensions. I'm sure. I'm sure. Don't even get me started about some of those things that we see. The man in the shed has joined us. Ian, great to have you here. Okay, well, that was a really good discussion about safety. Some good comments there, and everybody, please be careful with your space heaters during the winter when things get cold. All righty, well, let's get on now and talk about aluminum. So let me pull up aluminum here first before we do it. You don't need to watch me dig through all the charts on the Trading Economics website. Let's just get there first and then bring it up. So here are aluminum futures. So we're saying aluminum futures in the UK fell to 2,780 per ton, hitting the lowest level in 4 weeks, tracking a broader pullback from risk assets. Some Federal Reserve officials have also cautioned against further rate cuts. So that plays into pretty much every commodity that's out there. Still, the recent pullback masks tightening conditions in the aluminum market. This is a very important part of the aluminum discussion. So please pay attention to this. China reaffirmed its focus on cutting overcapacity in metal production to ease deflationary pressures, right? So China's concerned that they're making so much aluminum that it's going to lower the prices, leading to deflation. So they're going to force some of their manufacturers to cut production. Now, you can't do that in a capitalist kind of government like most Western worlds. But there are other things that will influence, in capitalism, just like the prices going down will lead to those kind of cutbacks. So one way or another, the production is going to be an issue. And folks are talking about aluminum production. So the country's aluminum output as a ceiling of 45 million tons is expected to be exceeded next year, while China plans to build new smelters in Indonesia, continue to face setbacks with their higher energy costs and regulatory hurdles. So kind of what you're seeing there is the Chinese government can tell Chinese manufacturers what to do in China, but if you go to another country, well, then it's not as much control, right? So they can still keep making more. But we go back to supply pressures are compounded by disruptions, including one of the potline producers in Iceland and smelter due to a smelter equipment failure. And in Australia, Alcoa has closed one of its plants because the bauxite ore grades have deteriorated. I'm glad to see that they fixed typo finally. So the supply issue is what's going to be a concern with aluminum. So I dug deeper into that during the week, and here's our drivers. So for aluminum, we've got a strong growth signal going on. We've got a lot of demand in the world of renewable energy and EVs. And remember last week how we were talking about how AI data centers, because they use so much electricity and so much energy, they're driving copper. Well, they're also driving aluminum because their aluminum is also frequently used for cabling and wiring, in the long distance transmission lines, the high tension lines that go from the generating sources to the AI plants. I had aluminum cable behind me. Some of you may recall after the hurricane came through and they cut out the cable and they left a bunch of it behind, and I was able to get it scrapped out. So there's a lot of aluminum that's used in, our power structure, our modern society. Plus, electric vehicles, they need to be lighter weight. Even gasoline and diesel engine vehicles have a lot of aluminum in this. Some of our newer vehicles are almost all aluminum now. Excuse me. So the demand signal for aluminum is going to continue to go up. In fact, I have seen some sources that are forecasting that the demand for aluminum will go up by another 40% by 2030 and another 80% by 2050. So that's just a lot of demand signal on aluminum. Add to that it can be very expensive to produce primary aluminum, which is the term that they use for aluminum produced from the bauxite ore. It's very energy intensive. And that leads a lot of companies to either continue or introduce recycling into their production stream. So it's not just the recycling companies that are making aluminum. By the way, secondary aluminum or recycled aluminum only uses about 5% of the energy requirement when compared to the same amount of primary aluminum. So, I mean, that's a lot of energy savings if you can use secondary aluminum. And so you've got not just the recycling companies, but you have primary producers are adding recycling capacity into their plants so that they can take advantage of those energy savings. It's interesting that I also found this number really interesting: 1.5 billion tons. That is 75% of all the aluminum that has ever been produced is still in circulation. All right. So throughout the course of humanity, 1.5 billion tons is still being, moved around. That's just, to me, that's kind of, I just find that amazing that we have aluminum that has been recycled who knows how many times. The classic case, like you saw in my thumbnail for this video, for this live stream, the aluminum can. You can, when you take that aluminum can back to a recycling center, it could very well be a new aluminum can within 30 days. It's just amazing to me how fast that can turn around. So aluminum is pretty much one of those forever recyclable kind of things because you're not breaking down the aluminum structure the way plastic can degrade every time it gets recycled. So aluminum, can be recycled for a long time. We as recyclers play a really important part in this aluminum story because we, the scrappers and recyclers of the world, are a big part of that recycling market. Think of all the aluminum that you handle as a recycler, and just that is a huge part of the aluminum market. All right, so let's look at the forecast for aluminum, and I want to draw your attention here to this part of the chart. It is a nice steady line going up, and let's use a little bit thinner arrow here. Ooh, but let's turn that into an arrow. So we have a nice upward trend here for our aluminum. So again, this signal is very comforting to us as scrappers and recyclers. It says we can continue to bring our aluminum into our recycling, whether it's our scrapyard, wherever we're recycling it, and get reasonable prices for it that should continue to go up. Now, why is this why is this something that we want to pay attention to? Well, let's look at this 10-year mark here. Some of us have been doing this for 5 to 10 years, and in that time, we've seen aluminum climb up and drop off, and climb up and drop off. And so, seeing this line here is very reassuring. And let me do this for you. I'm going to just use a straight line. I'm not going to put an arrow on this because I don't want to suggest going backwards. But if we follow the slope of this line, what we can see is that since the recent dip that most of us experienced, back here, aluminum has pretty much grown along this line. So, that's a very interesting signal for us. So we just keep playing into that, selling into that aluminum market. We're going to keep on getting it. Yeah, there's going to be times when you hit that low point, but if you follow the theory of dollar cost averaging that says, if you keep paying the same amount in over time, you average out the highs and the lows. And when you see a nice steady increase going on like that, then overall, you're going to continue to do well with your scrap aluminum. So my recommendation, keep bringing in your scrap aluminum. Don't hoard it. That's not going to do you a whole lot of good. And it's difficult to hoard aluminum anyway because, it can really take a long time to build up, enough quantity. And I mean, people have tried to do it. People have tried to corner the aluminum market and put a run on it and stuff. You got to have a lot of money and a lot of space to do that. So just keep selling your aluminum. Keep it moving. Clean it if you can so you're getting your best price. But just keep it moving. It's interesting. My yard, they don't differentiate between sheet or cast or MLC. It's basically clean or dirty. That's what my yard does. But there's other yards. I mean, like I had a yard in Florida that, holy cow, sheet and cast and MLC, and boy howdy, they were, they'd break out the XRF guns sometimes to figure out what type of aluminum before they gave you a price for it. So the sophistication of your yard really, is a huge factor. All right, let's see what's going on. We're going to leave the aluminum here. I'm going to put the forecast up real quick. Come on, forecast. There we go. I'm going to leave the forecast up, and we're going to go see what kind of comments we have here on aluminum. Got some folks talking about electricity and such. Scrapping on the Fly is talking about how he's got 20 amp breakers instead of 15 amp in each room. That's back to the heater discussion again. Freaking Awesome's talking about a project to get some more amps. Yeah, okay, we're not going to go there. Oh, man. All right. Now, I'm not saying that you should stack your aluminum. I'm saying sell your aluminum. Don't stack it. All right. You know, if you want to keep it for 20 or more years, whatever. All right. But to me, that's silly. I think you should uh, just keep selling it. I really do. I don't think there's much value in trying to stock up your aluminum. Uh, uh, let's see. Aluminum is also one of the metals that has a high fire problem at yards. Um, Certainly, if a uh, aluminum can burn, can get involved in a fire, say a lot more than steel. Absolutely. And you can run into this problem where if somebody mixed, say, lithium batteries in a load of scrap and that lithium battery fires off, well, yeah, it could get the aluminum engaged and that could get really ugly. So yeah, the yards tend to be a little bit careful with aluminum, but you got to really work at trying to get aluminum to burn. Um, it's not quite as simple as as some other metals, but yeah, I mean it's certainly something you got to be careful of. Oh, Richard, I tell you, back when I was drinking, I used to joke around with folks about a very similar kind of thing. I used to say, yeah, I mean, I even brewed my own beer for a long time. And I said, yeah, I'm going on a diet. I'm switching to gin. Uh, yeah, aluminum with magnesium would be more problematic. The magnesium can burn really easy, so that's a and aluminum dust can be very flammable. Yes, yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Got some got some folks. Mike's Meltdown has joined us. Mike, we were talking about your the safety thing was fire heater. So I got to the discussion of that you asked me to, or you gave me permission that I could talk about your fire heater problem there. Magnesium wants to catch fire. Water helps it. Yeah. Yeah, we're talking about the potential for aluminum to catch fire at scrap yards again. Yeah, it's aluminum is certainly a little more of an issue at the scrap yards. I don't think for us it's going to be as challenging. I mean, the big thing that could happen for us is if something else started a fire at your shop, and you've got a lot of fine aluminum there. Well, that like aluminum shavings and things, yeah, that could be an issue. If you've got bars and heat sinks and stuff, it's not as likely to be a fire issue. Aluminum is a constant, especially in the automotive industry. Yep, yes, sirree. That's how they're making the cars lighter and squeezing out a little bit more mileage. Uh, And Ian says, I've seen magnesium mixed up with aluminum or aluminium. When being melted, it burnt the whole lot. Could not get put out. Yeah, yep. About the best the fire department will do is put on so much water that that they flood it down. You know, the when you one of the things about flooding a fire with water is you're lowering the temperature and you're cutting off oxygen. Now, you can't, of course, cut off all the oxygen with the water unless you uh, water level rises above where the fire is at. But one of the problems with things like magnesium is that if it's burning, it can generate its own oxygen for fire. So it's a tough one. It is a tough one. Yeah, any metallic dust, is flammable. Thermite is, yeah, exactly. I mean, it's used as an explosive sometimes, right? Thermite is bad stuff. Solars has joined us. Welcome, Solars. Great to have you here. Okay, so some good discussions there on aluminum, and yeah, keep pushing your aluminum, folks. Just keep it moving, because we are part of the solution. So it we as scrappers and recyclers are part of the solution. I had somebody drop me a comment this week, and they said, ever since I've started scrapping, I've had my family and the people that I know have been looking down on me and giving me a hard time. And I told them, I said, look, whenever they start giving you a hard time, I recommend that you take the position that you, as a scrapper and recycler, are making a difference in this world. You're keeping stuff out of the landfill. You're preventing it from, just taking up useless space. And by getting it recycled, you're also cutting down on the amount of energy that is necessary to continue to make raw products. And then ask them, what have they done to give back? Now, I know that a lot of folks do this just to make money. They're not doing it because of environmental consciousness or those kind of things. They just need to make the money. So that's a little bit different twist, but we are part of the solution. Now, of course, it's also a lot different than the dumpster diver that's pulling food out of the dumpster and those kind of things. That's an entirely different type of diving and recycling. And you know, in the world of recovering metals and such, we are making a difference collectively. And you may feel like, well, my one or two truckloads or carloads, a month or a quarter isn't that big a deal, but there's a lot of us out there doing it, and so it is a big deal. So keep on being part of the solution. I want to point out, I want to take a few minutes here as we get near the end and take a look at what our girl has been up to. So we're over here on the shark research site, and we're going to go to the shark tracking, and we're going to go down and we're going to click on Salvager. And look at this. So she was tagged here. Remember, she went back up in here. Then she swam out. Well, she didn't swim across, but she, swam out way offshore. And then she's been tracking down the coast. So she got down here around Cape Cod, Nantucket and stuff. Maybe thought she could get a part in Jaws 7 or whatever. Moved on down here past New Jersey, going on down here towards Delaware, Maryland. She's down here off the entrance to the Chesapeake Bay. And you can see where she is. This is the 21st of November, so a pretty recent location hit. And I was talking with Dr. Hammerschlag about this migration, and it's not terribly unusual for great white sharks to make this kind of migration on the east coast of North America. And he brought my attention to something that's going on. So I want to show you this in the sea surface temperature. So here's the U.S., and I want to zoom in on this part of the track. So here's Florida down here. Here's the U.S. Here's Maryland, Delaware. Here's Canada. Here's Cape Cod. Here's Canada, and here's where she was originally tagged. All right, now let's get you out of the way. Let's go over here to the next. not that one. Oops, maybe I had to go in the other direction. Let's see. Wait a minute. Yes. So when we zoom in, by the way, these are from NOAA NESDIS. These are sea surface temperatures. This is 22 November update. Sea surface temperatures in degrees Celsius. The purple color is the coldest. The red color is the warmest. So what you see here is the Gulf Stream. And then you notice what's happening with this kind of meandering kind of signal. What actually happened, so here's Maryland, Delaware. So what actually happened was an eddy got cut off from the Gulf Stream. So this eddy was cut off on the north side of the Gulf Stream. So you've got sort of a warm eddy here. And I wonder if I can zoom in on that a little bit more, bring it down here. So you've got this eddy that cut off from the Gulf Stream. And Salvager, when she swam out, she probably picked up some warm, but she went over here to Cape Cod. Well, probably because she felt like having some seals, or like I said, she wanted to be in the next Jaws, or participate in the Jaws anniversary, or who knows what. She probably did. It doesn't look like, from the hits that we have on the tag, it doesn't look like she actually followed the Gulf Stream down here as much as she was working her way down here. She got in this warm current area where there's going to be a lot of marine life for her to feed on. So tuna and sunfish and large fish. And then it's going to be really interesting to see if she hangs out in this warm eddy for a while, or if she continues following the Gulf Stream. She is swimming against the Gulf Stream if she heads south in the Gulf Stream, but she might go on either side of the Gulf Stream in order to not be swimming against it and still work her way down into warmer waters. It'll be really interesting to keep an eye on what she does. I find this really fascinating because I love sharks and because I'm an oceanographer. Well, folks, it is time for us to head across the pond. So I encourage all of you to join us over in Ireland. Now, I did not get a chance to set up the auto redirect. So when I end this stream, you will not be automatically redirected to Ireland. So please go into the YouTube search bar, type in Scrapping Irish, and join us over in Ireland. Maybe we can continue these discussions. We never know what goes on, because Irish's stream is a question and answer kind of stream. So it's always a lot of fun, and we never know where it goes. If I don't see you over in Ireland, please have a wonderful and safe